So what we're going to talk about? So it's going to be about the importance of developing your photographic style. And apologies, but a large portion of this is probably going to be a bit about me. But that's partly because I've probably got a bit more experience about me than you have. So, who am I? So my real name is Dominic. Online, people tend to know me as Mr Flibble, and there's a long story behind that which I probably won't go into. Actually I'm not, but it's just like a photo. So tonight what we're going to talk about, so we're going to talk about what constitutes a style. So there are, I think, a lot of things that constitute style. Why is it even important? Why bother? How do you actually go about developing a style? Is there a process that you go through that actually can help you develop a style? If you get one, then what? What's important about it? And then talk about how I describe my style. This is really difficult for me, but I'll have a go. And maybe ask the question, is a style actually important? And maybe we're going to open it up to questions and try and get some feedback. And then I'm going to hand over to Lena, who's around here somewhere, hiding behind the bushes. Where we'll talk about the upcoming stuff and maybe a bit of housekeeping stuff about the ways in which you can engage with Cambridge Darkroom. And apologies for this, and I would say never do this. This really hurts, and I really do that. So what constitutes a style? Well, actually, I should probably say there's these are the names of either the pictures, or if they are if there's a photo credit, that's kind of where it's going to be. And down here, this is the actual time scale. Okay, so I'm not sure that I feel particularly confident talking about some of these things because I should say that whilst I think I've got a style now, I can't speak for everyone. There's a lot of professional photographers here. I still call myself a passionate amateur, but I think that there's a lot of things that actually go together to dictate whether somebody has actually got a style. I mean, you've got crazy things I'm not talking whether or not you've got a Canon or a Nikon or something, but actually the type of camera that you actually use. I mean, is it film, digital, low mode, maybe you're using a scanner, I don't know, but you're capturing some images somewhere, and that can probably influence the style that you have. So lens and composition obviously makes a massive difference. So you a macro photographer, I spoke to macro photographer a second ago. Do you use wide angle photos, telephoto, fisheyes, all that kind of stuff. If you specialise in one of those areas, clearly you're going to have photos of a particular look and feel. Whether or not you do action photos and they're blurry or sharp, or whether or not you're overexposing stuff, clearly that has an effect. Some people just get to go to crazy places, maybe you're living in some random country. Nobody else can hope to capture the same kind of photos of you because you're in a very different environment to those other people. Similarly, people take lots of photos underwater. That's a different medium that other people can't actually engage with quite so easily. So they could, in theory, develop a style in that particular way. This one's massive. So processing is probably more relevant in today's digital age. But even if you think about what you can do with film and all that kind of stuff, there's throwing crazy chemicals on your film to try and get interesting effects and dodging burning, which has been done for years, obviously. And then the photographer themselves, you're an angry person, you're a happy-go-lucky person, you're somebody that wants to make the world a happier, shinier place. That probably influences the type of photos that you're actually going to do. So what I'd say is that all of these things, in some combinations, some crazy combinations, probably dictate the kind of style that you're going to be able to do. And this one, I'm not going to even go into that one because that one's just too big. I mean, there are a bazillion things you can take photos of, and you don't need to tell you that. So this is a guy called Johnny Patience. On Flickr, I think he's awesome. And clearly he's got quite a specialist style. I mean, it's massively shallow depth of field, obviously really low, huge amount of bokeh in the background, and really vibrant colours. And you can kind of pick his photos out a mile away because they're beautiful, they're very detailed, but at the same time colourful and this wonderful blurry background. So just kind of as an example of somebody who's taken macro and landscape, I don't know, or flowers or something, with a massive amount of colour, and produced like a really interesting style, which other people can go on to copy and look at and think that's really cool. But I'd argue that this is quite a distinct style, and it's something that is this guy Johnny, who lives in the south of Ireland, does very, very well. Great guy. And then this guy, Rod, or Tu le nom son déjacré, is again like a real inspiration to me. He goes around befriending people in Paris, like a lot of like homeless people, and he'd be like chatting to some guy like for, let's say, like 2 hours or 4 hours, gaining their confidence before eventually you'll ask them, can I take like your photo? And he really captures these really amazing, emotional, close photos. And if you think about a lot of the photos you see of like homeless people, quite often they're from a distance because the person doesn't dare go and actually have a speak to them. This person's like specialising in the fact that they go and chat to these people and gets some really kind of in your face, detailed kind of like stuff. Massive processing, like it's got dodging and boning, like in spades, but it's they're really intimate shots, and so you should go and check out his stuff because he really is awesome. And he also has another set of photos which are completely different, which I'm not going to show you because some of them are actually a little bit not dodgy, like in a kind of like pornographic way or anything, but they're very intense. And beautiful and colourful and stuff, but they're certainly a very, very distinctive style. So this guy's got two very distinct styles. I don't know if you come across candy bars. So this is like some guy who literally puts confectionery on a scanner. And it's really interesting because you get to find out what the inside of a Milky Way looks like in a kind of like perfect way. What does a crunchy look like? Well, everybody knows what a crunchy looks like. But did you know that Kit Kats have sometimes got like these crazy bits going on? So is this a style? Do you know, I'm actually not sure. I think this is maybe an idea that somebody's done it. This doesn't necessarily take a massive amount of skill to do it, or practice or anything. Although the guy would actually argue that he spent a lot of time working out the perfect way to cut candy bars so that they don't kind of go wrong and squidge and look horrid. But I'm not sure that's actually a style, more than just an idea that somebody's come up with. And then Brooke. So I met Brooke in London a little while back, and she is awesome. She's just the most positive person you could possibly ever meet. And she's got this really kind of like fantasy style. Like it's nearly always like a square frame. There's sort of like a real fantasy element. It's kind of ethereal and moody. And you'll notice like often like her stuff's got flowing stuff, yet like it's muted and flat and often really very, very beautiful. She takes a lot of photos underwater as well, which this one isn't obviously, but again, like you get these flowing fabrics, and it's really inspirational. I'm massively like pleased, like whenever a new Brooke shaded photo pops up on my Flickr streak, because I go, okay, that's clearly like something that maybe one day like I'll take a photo of it like her. By the way, this is Miss Amelia, who's also like a bit of a Flickr superstar, and Brooke as well, who's got about a bazillion followers. So that's all quite interesting, but why actually bother? Why even look at getting a photographic style? Is there like any reason why you should actually bother? Because a guy actually posted on my photos the other day. It's just not important now. Everyone keeps saying like, why bother doing like a photographic style? Maybe this is an interesting question. But I think I would argue that I'm not sure you get a choice. I think that it's inevitable that you're going to get style. And that's maybe a bit controversial, but that's what I'll take my opinion on. And I think in this day and age where everyone's got a decent camera, and you can pick up a decent SLR almost anywhere, and there's no big barrier to getting into like a quality camera. A style actually like helps separate you from other people. It maybe gives you some kind of edge that other people have got. And how you use that edge is your own thing. I think it's important that it helps you create something that's recognisable in you. So if I go back, So this is clearly like a brick shading photo, and there's no way that when I look at this I wouldn't think that that's a brick shading photo. So it's very much recognisable as well. Expressing who you are, and all of these sound quite deep, and maybe some of them are, but showing people what your view on the world is, your photographic eye, could be very, very different to somebody else's, and I think that's actually quite an important thing, that if you pick up a camera, why am I taking a photo? Well, it's probably like to express something of the way I see the world, and I think obviously that's going to vary massively between different people. This was maybe the obvious one, to win business or to lose business. So clearly if you set yourself up as somebody who does photography professionally, then clearly having a style means that the person who's actually commissioning your work or using your work in some particular way can find you, because they go, I need somebody who's got a friendly look, or I need somebody who's got I know, a light-hearted, characterful kind of look, or I need somebody who's brilliant at taking macro shots, or whatever. If you become a specialist in that area, then in theory you're more likely to gain the attraction of somebody who's looking for that style. So whilst I think I'm probably never going to make the front cover of Vogue, I might become like the inspiration on some other thing. And to lose business is probably equally important, because you don't necessarily want to be doing a job that you're not particularly suited to. I think sometimes the style really helps go, okay, this person over here definitely matches the kind of style I want, or this person over here, it's just not quite me. In the same way these pictures, you might look at them and think, well, would I have that in my living room? And a whole chunk of you will probably say yes, or I might say no, or vice versa. And that's down to style, and it helps you win business and lose business. And this one's a bit pithy, but enriching the world. Can you become an inspiration, like the way that Johnny Patience and Brooke and Rod have been for me, which has been something that maybe I aspire to. So, how do you develop a style? What is it that's actually going to set you on a course to develop a style? I would say that. Well, actually, I'm going to go right back to the beginning. So, in 2006, I didn't own a camera. So I've never used actually, when I was a kid, I used a film camera, but it was a tiny one, and it was literally to take photos of my mum or something. But in 2006, I was lucky enough, I got a bonus at work, and I had absolutely no idea about photography, and I thought I could buy something that's going to set me on a path to enjoying a new hobby. And this hobby was going to be photography, because I wanted to be creative, I wanted to do stuff, but I wasn't very good at drawing, and I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. So I bought a nice mid-range camera, and I think the next thing is what the hell do you buy? Which lens do you buy? You can get it with a kit lens, or the lens choice. Immediately goes, well, what kind of photos do I want to take? And so many people ask me, okay, so I'm just getting into photography, what lens should I buy? And the first question back is always, well, what are you interested in? What kind of photos do you want to take? So my path was, I want a wide angle, because I want to do, I want to take photos of landscapes and stuff, and I quite like the idea of taking photos of bugs and stuff. So I bought two lenses in the first day. Actually, no, that's a lie. I bought this one first, and about 4 days later, when I realised what this one did, I then bought that one. So I changed my mind almost immediately after realising what this would do. So before that, seriously, I never picked up a decent camera, and every photo was just a holiday snap. And this is the first photo I ever took, which was the garden shed, and literally it was about 4 steps away from the back door. So not necessarily my favourite photo, but so a lot of this actually I'm going to be showing photos that I'm not particularly proud of anymore, but I'm hopefully going to give you an idea of my progression. So I took this photo, and I think it's a bit boring. And I thought, okay, I'll take a photo, so I got my macro lens out, I'll take a photo of a rose. And so I took a photo of a rose, and I desaturated it a bit, and I thought, wow, I'm taking a photo of a rose. And then I went on holiday, and I took a photo of the Louvre, and I thought, wow, this is really nice, a nice architecture picture. And then I went to my macro lens, and I took some photos of some ladybirds hunting, creating kids and stuff. Which is why there's so many ladybirds in the world. So this is still 2006. Then I'd take excuses to go use my camera elsewhere, and I went to, you know this? Southwark. So I took my camera there. I took some more photos of bugs. These were some Kenko extension tubes because I was getting quite excited by macro and how close could I get. Another one, abstract. I took some photos of abstract things. I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is really rare. I took some photos of people. I never really picked up the guts to point my camera at somebody because it felt really, really odd. So I didn't do that very often. I took photos of cows because cows are brilliant and they can do this, which is awesome. But it's a picture of a cow. I tried my hand at street photography. I was really super nervous about this. This one was massively blurry and overexposed, and I had to go and pay them money because I felt so awkward about the whole thing. So I didn't never do what that guy Rob I showed earlier that could actually do. And then I did this, and this one was probably my most defining photo. So I was a member of a photography group called Fred Miranda, and they sent weekly assignments, and the assignment was self-portrait. I'd never done a self-portrait before, so this was my first self-portrait. I tried to be funny. I thought self-portrait, and to this day, this is still my most popular photo. And yet, I look at it and think, oh, rubbish, this terrible crop and detail. But maybe it's the idea that really got people liking that photo. And so fresh from the success of that, I had an audience of Flickr. I did something like this, which was, it actually looks like more Photoshop work than it actually is. It just involved a lot of pulling faces and stuff. Because my feet aren't really in there, obviously, as my shirts do. So these were really early days, but it was something that I started to realise that people liked this stuff, and that I could maybe make people laugh this way. And then this is 2007. 2007 was written off. I just took photos of cats because cats are brilliant. I took a sleeping cat, I took a cat, and so I love the cats, and I took lots of photos of cats. And I think the cats hated it. I quite liked it, but at the same time, I'm not sure that I was going to. It wasn't where my passion really lay. People like cats. Anyone likes a cat photo. I took product photos. This one I first got flashes. I hate this photo, by the way. So it's a bit blurry and stuff. Even though I was using a flash, which is just stupid when I think about it. And this almost described where I was with photos. I was taking photos of almost anything, partly just to see, could I do this photo? Could I do this photo? Could I do this photo? What kind of stuff would I do? And so I'd argue that I was going through a learning phase. I was photographing almost anything. If it moved or if it didn't move, I'd probably photograph it. So what looks like maybe just a few photos I'm showing you there was the sum total of a lot. I literally going to trying lots of different things. So I was experimenting with flashes, I was finding different angles and compositions that worked. I was really just going through let's learn how to use my camera. Clearly learning Photoshop. But I think the most important thing is learning what I actually enjoyed doing. And I think for me, I found that actually I enjoyed trying to create something that was maybe a little bit unusual, a little bit funny, but that was actually maybe a bit more staged, a bit more like trying to tell a story. But even at this stage, I was thinking, so much to I've got so much to learn. So what I stupidly did is I started with 365. I can blame that man over there. If everyone wants to point some things in. John, who had just done the 365. So this is taking a photo every single day. And I can't stress enough, if you want to get better at something, do it every single day. At this point, so this is the first photo I took, and it's of Marine, he's just there, looking lovely. This is the first photo that I took of that 365, obviously trying to be like the scene from Frodo from Lord of the Rings. And I started my 365 with brilliant intentions, and what I was going to do, I was going to document a whole year of my life. I was going to look back in 10 years ago, during the year 2010, that's exactly what I was doing. So I had lose some weight, which I've actually put on more weight. I haven't done that recently, and all these things. And this one was the key one, I guess. And it's a rubbish photo, from a aesthetic point of view, it's very, it's harsh and stuff. But seriously, my intention when I started my 365 was to document a year ago. I had no grand illusions of going anywhere, particularly other than getting more skilled. And then it kind of went wrong, because when I posted photos like this, these were gaining a lot more attention and a lot more interest than any of the photos that I was doing. And I think I started to realise that, you can do things and you can kind of come up with ideas, and people start to respond to them. And maybe I was learning that for me, for my particular set of circumstances, these were the kind of things that people were responding to the most. I took photos like, putting the camera in the tumble dryer, or was it the washing machine, I can't remember. I tried some stage photos where pretending that I was a dead person or seeing alive people or something. I did some stupid photos like trying to be sitting this rare one where I'm actually outside. It's not one of my favourite photos, but again, just in the interest of sharing where I went, I did this kind of thing. And I started to realise, and this was maybe, let's say, halfway through my 365, that I developed a style. And to this day, I still would say that I didn't see it at this point. But I started getting external confirmation that other people saw something in what I was doing that made me think that I had a style. So people say, hey, I'm going to sort of self-portraits, or you really made my day, or I look forward to my daily flibble. All these kind of things were starting to, so these are real comments by the way, where do you get all your ideas from? So even this one, the fact that maybe people thought that I was some amazing person who came up with ideas or something. All these things started to make me realise that maybe I had something that was starting to be a bit different from what I'm seeing elsewhere. So what do you do then? You carry on. So I started maybe taking more and more of the staged photos. So this one maybe a bit unusual because I started to play with warping tools where I was seeing what I could actually do in Photoshop. I spent longer in Photoshop, so this is clearly Wolverine's brother Spoonery, who's maybe not quite so successful. I took loads of photos of spoons and then spent ages grafting them on, trying to make it actually look like it was realistic. Still playing around with lighting, trying to work out what was going on. I did ones that were maybe like deliberately, it's an idea I came up with, like maybe ninjas I have to learn them too. If they do, like, would they get one of these books? I started playing with, sorry about this one, because I have to block it, but I started playing around with some darker stuff, like, how far can you push this thing, like, do people respond well to this, is this actually part of my style, I'm not quite sure. And it kind of culminated in things like covering yourself in Marmite, which is a really stupid thing to do. It gets to your eyes and sticks them together, don't ever do it. But I was starting to realise that I had a lot of maybe ideas that I could give people, maybe people would like that in some way. But I guess when you realise you've got a style, but then what's the next step? Why even bother? And I think I'd already kind of alluded to it. I think you just keep maturing it. I think it's about refining it, tweaking it, and especially exaggerating it. Like, how far can you push yourself in this direction? What's the next step? Because if you keep doing the same thing, it's just going to get boring. So you have to keep sort of like trying to evolve yourself in some particular way. So I'm still learning more. I'm still trying to learn more about Photoshop. I'm still maybe try and get bigger ideas. Like so I'm just in my living room all this time. What could I do that's maybe a bit more? So what might elevate me or make it so that somehow I can inspire other people. I think you get closer and closer to with maybe your skill, which, as I said, like the 365 is all about drilling in the way in which you can actually improve your technical skill. I started to get closer to maybe being able to express exactly what I wanted. So what was in my head would maybe be easier to realise the more skilled I became. And then I rather stupidly started a second 365. My second 365, I remember this one distinctly because I got a background. I got a background colour, which is actually just a piece of material which is almost nailed to my living room wall. And it meant that I could suddenly maybe make a photo pop a bit more. So if you look actually back through a lot of these, you notice the background is all kind of just grey and stuff. So suddenly I had a coloured background. And I thought, that's going to suddenly make my photos pop a bit more. I'm sorry again about this subject. And then this is maybe the projection's not showing it, but there's a kind of a colour going on here. I was again trying to darken things, it's trying to push where I'm going. So I couldn't carry on doing lots and lots of maybe frivolous kind of fun photos, but for me to maybe evolve a bit, I started thinking about what could I do with a slightly darker photo. It could be a bit creepy. Again, there's maybe a bit of colour processing and stuff. But sadly, actually, no Photoshop in this one in terms of distortions and stuff. It's actually become that. Pushing my Photoshop, I thought it's a pun on apple of the eye, and I was thinking, well, I actually put an apple in my eye and make it look realistic. And again, you've got to remember that this is over quite a period of time, and when you do it every single day, and like me, I probably spend on average an hour every day doing a photo. Sometimes it's a lot longer. This one was probably about 2 hours, I don't know. We went to the effort of actually putting a second apple in my eye, but realised actually it didn't look anywhere near as big, so I didn't bother that. But I was definitely pushing myself on the Photoshop side of things. And I was trying to evolve into more stories. So notice here, I've got much more of a background going on. My props department at home is getting ever more elaborate because I have costumes and hats and things like that. It's quite scary just how many props I have now after 600 odd photos of doing this. And then again, sometimes I just want to challenge myself. Can I do a really dark photo that's maybe less comedy? Because a lot of people go, can you do anything else? And sometimes you just want to try and do something different. So this one, it looks a lot darker than it actually is, because it was just one of those days I got absolutely no ideas and I'm putting crazy faces in front of the camera just trying to work out what I'm going to do. And that was just happened to be one of them. But I was hoping to go for something a little bit darker, moodier, some sense of sadness. But I was perfectly happy although I was depressed or something. And then I started doing my photos where I'm trying to really tell a story. So I'm changing lots of elements. So whilst the stock base photo of me is all original and stuff, including the globe, I'm adding a lot more texture to the background and those kind of things. Really trying to convey more of the story. To the point where this is my front living room, but maybe it doesn't look like my front living room. And again, apologies for the kind of subject matter because it's not necessarily particularly comfortable. But I'm really, here I'm actually starting to draw stuff. So this was all, I literally just used a Wacom tablet and I was drawing on elements. So I know that I'm blurring from, this isn't so much photography anymore, it's more from getting into the realms of digital art of some sort. But I'm seeing where I can push myself. How far can I go before I can really realise exactly what it is I want to say. So another quite dark photo, and don't do this. It makes your eyes dry out really quickly. It's not very comfortable. Again, it's for me, this is one of those photos where I've got absolutely no idea what I'm going to do. I know, I'll stick sellotape on my face and see what happens. And I guess. Another one, it's just, I'm trying to make more of a story, the backgrounds are changing a lot more. Not particularly exciting, but or even a great picture, there's lots of technical problems with it if you put it in detail. And then I do things like this. Again, maybe I haven't carried this on particularly well, but I think I look brilliant in the future. And it's an old photo, but I thought, what can I do to make it a little bit more exciting? So that's really trying to change change the style. So now it gets a bit difficult. So how do I describe my style? And I said this is really difficult because often other people have got a good opinion as to what my style is, and I'm not sure I fully understand exactly what it is, but I'm happy at defining it. So I think that it's quite obviously creative self-portraiture, and there's most of my photos nowadays have got me in it. And that's not narcissistic, it's not that I love myself or any particular thing, it's actually it's to do with when you've got a limited amount of time to take photos, so I'm doing one every single day, you can't always find an interesting subject matter, and so actually becoming the subject yourself is actually a much easier thing to do, and I think it's got slightly out of control. Technically, most of this is done like with a wide-angle lens at its maximum width, so like 16mm, and literally I'm this far away from my camera, so that really helps to elevate like the amount of distortion you get, and when I put a crazy face it maybe looks a little bit more crazy because it is super wide angle. On a more kind of like style kind of thing, I don't know, I think there's always a little bit of humour, but sometimes it's tinged with a little bit of sadness somehow. You almost feel for the character, maybe they're feeling a bit naive. There's always maybe that person's feeling a little bit, secretly they're happy, but the world looking on is maybe looking and pitying in some particular way. And this again, it's really difficult for me because I'm not entirely sure this is true, and maybe other people would see things that I don't see. It's clearly photoshopping. I mean, I spend quite a long time tweaking stuff. I say Marmite just at the bottom because I appreciate that not every photographer is going to like this, because there are purists out there who will never, the photo should be exactly as it's taken, and that's it. And I clearly go completely the other way. I take a lot of photos and I Photoshop and G's actually, which is not something that a lot of people do. So arguably it's more digital art now than it is actually photography. I really like this photo because Marie made me a t-shirt, which I thought was really quite cool, and it took us such a long time, so brilliant. So it is actually like creating a style important. Is it actually something that we should bother with? And I would actually say yes. And I think the main reason you do that is because it makes you describable. It means that somebody can actually say something about your particular style that means that other people are going to understand immediately that that's the kind of like thing that that person does. This is like maybe a bit grandiose, but it's the first step to being discovered. It's the first way in which, if you do want to ever get on the photo cover, on the front cover, and say something like Vogue, then unless you actually start developing a very distinctive style, there's no way somebody's going to pick you up and suddenly put a random photo on there. So I think that the more you take photos, the more you want to kind of like push yourself, the more you want to try and better yourself. Like initially probably copying other photos or other styles of people or trying to imitate them. You'll probably never actually be able to copy a photo directly, but you're certainly pushing yourself in the direction that helps you get better. And so I'd argue that all of these things are things that really help to make you, push you out to the next level. And the reason why I'm going to finish on, I think it's inevitable. I think if you really like photography, you will push yourself, and you are looking to show your vision of how you see the world, or you're trying to maybe take a better photo than this particular person, and each time improving. And the process of doing that, I would argue, is the first steps to actually developing a style, and that by virtue of trying to get better photography and spending more time with it, from those original factors that I pointed out, like the different combinations of camera and lens and processing, the type of person you are, subject matter and the environment and the exposure, all those things combined, which are going to be unique to you in some particular way, and will mean that you actually end up with something that's unique to you and it is your style. But I would say that it takes a little bit long time before you actually realise that yourself, and sometimes it takes external validation to realise that you've got it, because for me, it wasn't until way into 2010, so a good 4 years after I started taking photos, that I even appreciated I had a style, because it just felt so random for me. And that's all I want to say. Thank you so much for listening. It's really cool. If you want, I've got a whole bunch of business cards with on if you can't remember it. I'm really excited just because it plopped through the letterbox today, but I'm on the back of in the magazine today, so I'm really quite chuffed about that. But yeah, I'm going to pass you over to Lena, who's going to maybe talk about some of the other Cambridge Darkroom things.
Questions?
Oh yeah, questions, yeah. I completely forgot about that bit. Does anyone have any questions? If they do, I'll probably run over to wherever you are with the microphone. I don't pretend to actually know the answers.
Just going to ask how big the tablets are you take every day.
Yeah, I take a lot of tablets every day. So actually my process of taking most photos starts with taking a photo. So everyone thinks I've just got a bazillion brilliant ideas, I don't. The way that I learned to come up with ideas is to start. So if I go and put a tripod there and I put a camera on it and I start taking random photos of myself, like putting stupid photos, I'll go back around the back of the camera and review what I've just taken, and one of them will probably spark an idea. And even like sometimes I put on some random props like some glasses or whatever, and there's nothing like being inspired by something you see than just trying to sit in a room and go, I don't know, what am I going to take a photo of? So my process is very much, I've got every single day I've got absolutely no idea what I'm going to take a photo of, but I start by taking a photo, and that photo could just be rubbish, but it sparks an idea somehow. And that's how I learn to cope with coming up with an idea. And what gives me hope, I guess, is that when I was maybe 16 days or even like 15 days into my first 365, I had no ideas, 0 ideas. And now I'm 600 odd photos into it, and I'm still, realising that even if I've got no idea, like when I get home at night and I'm tired and I'm, had a crap day at work or whatever, I can still initiate that ideas process simply just by going in front of a camera, taking a few random photos and hoping that that sparks some kind of thought as to what I can do.
Well, do you work professionally in a photographic environment, or?
No, I don't work professionally. So I work at a software company. My job title is head of creative. But I don't do anything professionally in photography. So I sell some photos. I don't make massive money out of it. Almost anyone that's a professional in this room makes more money out of it than I do. It's something I'd love to do, but I also enjoy my job, and this is kind of a hobby that's a bit long. But yeah, I would like somebody to take it a bit further. So I've been approached by various people before, and I've done some things, but I've never taken the plunge and tried to do it professionally.
So how many photos do you take apart from your 365?
So how much photos do I take apart from my 365? So for every day, I probably take, let's say 50 to 100 photos just to get one photo. So outside of just my 365, I try to limit it to just special events and things. If I go to London or I go to like some trip, I will undoubtedly take my camera. If I go on holiday, I will take my camera with me, and I will take photos. But the problem I've got is that I just don't have the time to process them, because I spend all my time doing my 365, but I don't necessarily have time to do other things. So I started writing a book at the beginning of the year, and it's kind of floundered because I don't get the time to devote to it. So it's kind of stupid that I'm doing this recurring thing that steals all of my time, and then I always do nothing with the photos. Just a bit stupid, really.
So just following on to that, I don't have much time for anything else. This is your second 365. Do you think there'll be a third? Is it an addiction now? Would it stop being a third 365 and will you just be a photo a day goal? Or do you see the end in sight?
So I'm quite proud of the fact that I have done it 600 days in a row. I've never missed a day. I've always taken it between midnight and midnight. I've never cheated. Will I carry on when I get to the end of, so the 31st of this year, so 31st December this year? I think I'm going to make that call when I get there. I enjoy the challenge of it, and I think it's helping me grow as a photographer. But I also appreciate that I've got little time to do much else. So whilst I still do go out socially and stuff, and I've actually got downside quicker at being able to process photos. So when I really need to, I can take a photo very, very quickly and process it and do things that my camera setup is got much quicker. So I'm much quicker at finding all the settings that I need and setting up my flashes and all that kind of stuff. It still means that I don't have that much time, and there would be a massive time bonus or win if I suddenly gave it up. I think I'll have to answer that question at the end of the year. What's with the teeth? I don't know. I think I just wanted to make myself look more stupid or ugly in some particular way, if I'm absolutely honest. So a lot of it, you probably see from my photos, they're quite self-deprecating. I really try and make myself look more stupid or whatever, or ugly in some particular way. And I think that's one means of doing it. I couldn't honestly answer like why, on an emotional way I'm doing that. I've got no idea. I can only say that sometimes it suits the look of the kind of photo that I want to do. And so many people have told me, just lose the teeth, don't do the teeth. The teeth are horrid. And I probably should lose the teeth, but there's something that I've done enough times now that they almost feel like they're part of the style. So I don't know whether I should lose them. But I do try it. I do listen to people that say, don't do teeth, I really don't like the teeth. But at the same time, I can look at some of my photos that have been maybe the most popular, like, as in people have ranked them in some particular way, and some of them have got the teeth in. And you go, maybe they love the teeth. So, yeah, but I've heard a lot that people say, just don't do the teeth. And I've got two pairs. It's not just like it was the same thing.